Okay, welcome. This is the Whitman Finance Committee meeting for Monday, May 17th, 2021. It's 7 o'clock. We're broadcasting virtually from Zoom with the assistance of the Whitman Hanson Community Access. I have emailed the agenda in advance and just a quickly review. We have minutes to act on. Several meeting minutes were emailed in advance of this meeting. Reserve fund stands at $37,321.20. Public forum is temporarily suspended, hopefully for a very short amount of time for the COVID-19 pandemic limitations. New business tonight, we should be voting budget detail recommendations. I did include on new business to Board of Selectmen update. They are meeting tomorrow. I did send an email, I think I forwarded it to committee to request being on the agenda to give an update of the Finance Committee's actions. If in fact we do take actions on the detail of the budget, Article 2. Old business, we have our standing items on there. Other business communications, we have no communications. And we do have the town administrator and the town accountant with us tonight, so certainly welcome them and appreciate any updates that they want to provide the committee. So on the calendar, there's very limited amount of dates left over here. We have one more meeting that I just posted today for the 24th, which is next Monday. If in fact we need it, it is posted. And then the town meeting is on June 2nd at 5:30. I will be posting that meeting for 5:30 at Whitman Hanson Regional High School, unless that changes. So that's the agenda. So I think maybe this is an opportunity we could probably try to make it through some of our meeting minutes while we're waiting for John Galvin, who did email that he may be a little late coming into the meeting. If that's amenable to the board. Anybody not prepared to review meeting minutes, let me know. Seeing none. The first one that I have here is April 12th. It's one that kind of got shelved, I think. Samantha did email it out when it was fresh, and then we didn't really act on it, so she re-emailed it out. And it's a very brief meeting. It's only one page and really the closing on the last page. So if anybody is not prepared, just let me know to review and accept the meeting minutes from April 12th. So it starts on page 411. There was everybody in attendance. We approved the April 5th meeting minutes. At 7 o'clock, we started the meeting with discussions. David Quintero did provide an update on the Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee. Through the next paragraph, we wanted to, basically the meeting was really just a placeholder while we were waiting for the budget. And that's really the gist of the meeting minutes. Does anybody have anything on page 411 they would like to amend? Kathleen?
Just a typo in the last paragraph. I think it's members of the Finance Committee agreed to wait to begin the review.
Begin. Okay, thank you. Samantha, you got that? Begin instead of being?
Yes.
Okay, and then on the second page, it's just basically wrapping up at 7:21. The motion was made to adjourn. Anything on page 412? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from April 12th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call. Kathleen?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
John Noon?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. The next meeting minutes we have are from April 19th. And just correct me if I'm going out of order, like this is the way they're stacked here in front of me. So April 19th meeting minutes start on page 413. So just so the committee knows, there was an amendment that was requested. That's why these meeting minutes were tabled, I believe. And then highlighted is the change that is being presented. So Page 413 starts out at 7 o'clock with the presentation of the consolidated budget format from our town administrator. In the comments associated with it, continue on the second paragraph. And again, that amended paragraph sentences start on page 413 and go into 414. Any amendments beyond the ones that have been presented? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to page 414 with a continuation of the amendment by Kathleen. Talking about the consolidated format, then the funding for each line item within Article 2, in that the town administrator reviewed the historical spending for each line. Further down, John Noon asked about the federal government relief package. And then there was a discussion about the budget assessment being changed. And the final paragraph is in relationship to the Whitman Middle School building project, passing module 1. Any further amendments on page 414? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to accept April 19th meeting minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second,
Second, okay, further discussion, roll call, Kathleen,
yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so the next meeting minutes, we have 2 left. May 3rd. Starts on page 415. So this meeting began at 7 o'clock and went into discussion about the warrant. On the second paragraph, John Noon made a comment concerning the Capital Expenditure Committee. And then the final paragraph, the chair asked the members how they would like to proceed with providing budget recommendations. Anything to change on page 415? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to page 416. So the paragraph at the top about the position vacancy to resolve payroll inequities, presentation and discussion with our town administrator. Then we went into the process of reviewing of the budget detail, Article 2, and request a motion to approve all non-question lines. Those are listed. And then the lines that were questioned are followed through the rest of page 416. Any changes, omissions, deletions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the final page, 417. And the discussion continued with the final questioned line items. The town administrator committed to sending a list of the questioned line items to the finance committee. Ms. Otina asked about the Duval roof expenditure and the money that was set aside for that being utilized for other projects within the budget. John Galvin gave an update on the Whitman Middle School building project, and there was an update given for the South Shore Technical School about the debt authorization. And then the final sentence or paragraph is in reference to the treasurer's requested salary increase. And the meeting adjourned at 8:29. Anything to add, delete, or correct on page 417? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the May 3rd meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second,
You have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none? Only one that can't vote on this one is Al. Kathleen,
yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Steve.
Dave,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, thank you. All right, we're on the final, I believe, May 10th was last week. Quite an extensive meeting minutes. beginning on page 418. Welcome, John Galvin. You've come in while we're just reviewing the meeting minutes. Right now, we're on the May 10th, which was last week, meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're just beginning on page 418. Meeting called to order at 7. Mary Beth Carter came into the meeting to discuss her requested salary increase. The discussion ongoing, and she departed at 7:13. And at the bottom of the page, we went into the warrant article discussions and the motion to start out with Article P1. Any edits, requests, deletions on page 418? Seeing none, we'll go to the next page. Page 419, just is a recap of the warrant articles that were discussed, and motions to recommend are listed. Anything to change on page 419? Seeing none, we continue into page 420 with articles 4 through 8. Same thing, discussion, recommendations, voting on the articles in the warrant. Any changes, deletions? Seeing none, we'll move to page 421. 421, the discussions and voting concerning Article 9 through Article 14. Questions, comments?
Just a typo.
Oh, sorry. Dave, did you have a question on?
It's a typo. Instead of quality, it should be qualify.
Okay, on page 421?
Yeah.
Okay. Halfway down, all the way down?
Dave, which article?
Sorry, I lost it. I'll find it. Oh, yeah, very top, very first sentence.
Page
Qualified.
421?
Yep. Mr. Cadero asked if the repairs to the town park playground would qualify.
So
Am
that
I
was probably
looking
the
at-
previous page, Rick. I
Okay,
think the previous page,
Okay.
Article 8.
It's showing up on 421 on my
Yeah.
page.
huh, okay. So Article 8, which is on my page 420.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, anything else on that page? 421, anything on that page? Okay, page 422 is Articles 15 through 19. The discussion and the votes on those articles within the warrant. Questions, comments, deletions? Seeing none, we'll move to the page 423. These are regarding Articles 20 through 38. Questions? Seeing none, the final page is page 424. And again, the Articles 39 and 40. And then the final question regarding the American Rescue Plan was answered by our town administrator, Lincoln Heineman. Motion to adjourn was made at 9:15. Anything to change, edit on that page? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the May 10th meeting minutes as amended.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, and for this one, Rosemary, we'll have to abstain. So roll call vote, Kathleen,
yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Abstain.
John Galvin.
Abstain.
Okay, abstain, and I will vote yes. Okay, that does it for our meeting minutes. Samantha, thank you very much. That's a lot of meeting minutes to catch up on, done excellently. So that brings us to our discussion on the agenda for action on the detail of the budget for 2022. We do have just Ralph absent. I'm of the opinion that we probably should start in on the articles that need either to be revoted or the ones that were questioned? Are we prepared to move forward on the detailed budget?
I am.
Anybody not? All
Can we
right.
put it up on the screen or
Yep.
I'll do it on my own screen if you don't want to do it collectively, but
No, Lincoln had provided the sharing last time.
Yep,
for the-
I can do that.
okay, thank you, Lincoln.
You're welcome. Can folks see that?
Yes.
Great.
Excellent. Okay, so on page 1, there are no question line items. We'll move to page 2.
The first is on page 3.
Okay, so the first question line item is on page 3. And it's the town administrator assistant salary line. Line 123, 1001133. Questions on that line? And you'll have to kind of just jump right in because I can't see everybody all at
Dave,
once.
Have you found somebody for that or can that still go down? Yeah,
No, so I'm intending to be honest with you, the other responsibilities have taken my attention in the immediate term, but I'm intending I'm intending over the next couple weeks to get the posting out and go forward with the process.
okay.
Just a question, Lincoln, I have no problem with that. Absolute assistance, great. The position we had before was, my consideration was 60 some odd $1,000 with full benefits. Now we're going up for 105,000. I'm 100% behind you. Absolutely for this. Let's see what we can do for it. Let's give you a shot at it. That's what I'm all about. So let's do this and go from there. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And just as a quick point of clarification, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but the last assistant town administrator, I believe, was at approximately $82,000. I can get that figure, but it had been higher, just as a point of clarification.
Right. Or like the only reason I say it is other budgets are cutting, we're increasing it, which is fine. You're the man in charge, and we trust you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Kathleen, you had a question, comment?
I do. It's very similar to Al in that, as I've said before, Lincoln, I want you to be successful, and I'm excited about Whitman entering the 21st century about 2 decades late. And I do think that you need the support. One of my concerns, however, in the course of the budget hearings, and it would have preceded your appointment, is that we have a one-man or a one-person technology department. And when that person goes on vacation, that person gets phone calls, and that's completely not fair. So I'm hopeful that the assistant will be in a position to help out with that, since we are not planning to add a clerical or an assistant position to the technology department. People need to have a life as well as a job. So if this person can be sought who has some technology background, that would be great. It would sort of address 2 birds with 1 stone.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen, for your comments. All right,
Yeah,
further questions?
I just had one, Rick, or
ahead,
actually for
Chuck.
Lincoln. Is this the town administrator? Would that be a contracted position, a signed contract, or just a hire manager?
That's an excellent question. Likely, it would simply be governed by the personnel policies of the town and not have an individual contract.
Okay,
I can't promise that, but that would be my intention.
okay. Thanks.
Okay, further questions regarding this line? All right, so I'll entertain a motion and for line 133 to read 105,000. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this line? Okay, all in favor? I'm just
Rick,
gonna
can I raise a
hold on.
question?
Go ahead, John, sorry.
As far as filling this job, is there any chance that the typical association, Lincoln, that you would be in would have some guidelines to direct the qualifications required to meet the basic criteria to be an assistant town administrator?
Great question. So actually, that's some work that we've been doing over the last few weeks to collect existing, I'm getting bad feedback, sorry, but to collect existing job descriptions from other similar towns in terms of population and tax rate, and see what are in the job descriptions of those other towns, and getting a flavor of what else is out there and what qualifications might be in there as well. So,
Okay.
but there wouldn't be, so for example, so there's a International City and County Managers Association. I actually looked with them to see if, they have sort of a standard template for a job description, and not that I've been able to find. So that was sort of some of the reach out to, neighboring towns and like communities.
Okay, I've been back and forth as far as supporting the position. And I will vote for the position, but, and I completely trust your efforts to find the best person to do the job for the town. I guess what makes me nervous is you're not the official hiring person. And I'm concerned that we may end up with somebody hired with an educational opportunity at over $100,000 a year, as opposed to somebody that comes in running full speed because they've already got the necessary education and work experience in the job. You don't need to respond to that because that gets into a little bit of a delicate balance, but I just felt I should express my concern about the salary amount and I guess the past history with that job and how it's been filled.
Okay, John, your comments are well taken. Thank you very much. And just as a clarification too, that we're voting on the recommendation for the dollar figure, not on the position itself. You just mentioned the
Right.
fact that you support the position, but the vote and the discussion is relative to the recommendation for the dollar amount on the line item. So thank you very much. Anybody else? Anything else further for this line? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call. Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes, sir.
Rosemary,
Yes.
Dave,
Abstain.
and John Galvin,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Did I miss anybody? Again, I got to scroll through the names, so. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question line item.
That would be on page 11. And actually, just as a reminder, that it's not question, but as a reminder, these are the green are the changes that made by the Board of Selectmen at its last meeting. And there are a few of those changes. It's on, I think, 2 pages. And so that's what is signified by green.
Okay, so I think just for our housekeeping, these are ones that we're going to have to vote to reconsider, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we have already voted these lines. So the dollar figures have changed since we voted. These were inclusive of our non-question line items. So I would suggest that the committee vote to reconsider these lines first, and then we'll see if we have questions, and then we will recommend what the vote will be on these line items. As they weren't questioned, I would suggest that we then just vote on the recommendations that are listed on this page. Is that clear? It might have sounded confusing, but we did vote these in the blanket non-questioned line items, and since then. Lincoln, would you like to just give a little bit of information on how these lines, obviously, we can't expect the first pass. We have our town accountant, our treasurer collector, making sure that all of these numbers add up. And in the course of that activity, there are going to be some dollar amounts that have to be adjusted. I think you have some that are going up and some that are coming down. So Lincoln, would you like to just give a little bit of a?
Certainly, yeah. So the line 145-1,112 for the treasurer collector's salary, that is a reflection of the Board of Selectmen and myself, for that matter, supporting the treasurer collector's request to be brought in line in terms of equity per the Collins report, in particular with the two Department of Public Works superintendents. The other lines in green are a reflection of small adjustments that were identified actually by the treasurer, and whose help I certainly appreciate in that. The original amounts that were in there were largely a function of the departmental requests. And for whatever reason, the original departmental requests were slightly off back from November. Ken and I did some more detailed look to make sure that we were applying the right steps and that kind of thing. And so this new number is sort of a consensus amongst the three of us, Ken, Mary Beth, and me, about what the actual necessary amounts for those folks are. So that's true of these three lines, and then the next green lines that you'll see.
Okay, so just as a clarification too, my question line item happened to be on the following page, but it was my intent to question the treasurer collector's salary line, and I inadvertently questioned the wrong line on the following page. So, but technically we have to reconsider these lines because they have already been voted.
Yeah, so technically 112, 1,000, 112 is actually probably should be blue, or I don't know, because it's both yellow and green.
Yes.
I guess that's
okay.
not blue. I don't know what that is, light green, but yeah.
All right, so I would suggest that the board take consideration on line 112 first on its own. Because like I said, this was the one I intended to question. And again, I think the follow-up, Mary Beth's presentation was very succinct. I think using the Collins report and the work that she does and the presentation she made to the committee, I'm confident that the information that we have and the recommendation that is before us are what we should be bringing to town meeting. But I'll certainly open it up to other questions if anybody else has any questions. It was my question line item, so that's why I wanted to follow up. So seeing none, I will entertain a motion for line 112 to read 102,000.
I make a motion.
A
Okay, we have
second.
a motion and a second. Okay, further discussion on this line. All right, seeing none, Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
Question,
okay?
weren't we going to vote to reconsider first?
We're on the green items, we're gonna reconsider first. This particular line was a line I questioned with the expectation.
Right.
We were
Oh,
gonna have a follow-up, and it's highlighted in the wrong color, that's all, John.
Yeah, so
That's why we're taking this one independently.
basically to set it back and then move the new amount, we can do that all in one motion. If that's, yes,
Okay, so would you like to amend your motion to include reconsidering and accepting at the same time, Kathleen?
I want to be.
Okay,
But I think it's a set, we never voted 112. We did vote 116 through 126, so those need to be reconsidered, but we put
Right.
112 on hold. So I don't think we
Okay.
have to reconsider 112.
I totally agree. John, are you all right with that? I don't think we need to reconsider this one.
that's fine.
All right, so we got, Kathleen was a yes, John,
Yes,
are you in favor? Yes, okay. Rosemary,
Yes.
Dave,
Abstain.
Chuck,
Abstain.
Al,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Abstain.
and I vote yes. Okay, did I get everybody? Did I miss anybody? All right. So lines 116, 121, 126. I'll entertain a motion to reconsider these lines that were previously voted last week.
I move to reconsider.
Second,
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Okay, Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
John Noon,
yes.
Rosemary,
yes,
and I vote yes. Okay, so now we will entertain a motion to accept we can do it line by line, or we could do it all three, 116, 121, and 126. We have a motion to concur with the town administrator's recommendation on the dollar amounts.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Is everybody all right with that? The way we're doing that? Okay, Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
yes,
Chuck,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Did I miss anybody?
John Galvin votes yes.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, so that does it for that page. The next question line item, I believe, is on 12. So again, this is a motion to reconsider. I'll entertain a motion to reconsider 116, 121.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion to reconsider these two line items. Okay.
Why are we reconsidering it? Did we put them on hold?
These two line items, anything in green, the numbers were corrected from the time that the selectmen voted the original budget and the time that these line items were not questioned. So if we do not revote them, then our dollar amounts that we had in previously, before they were corrected, would be the recommendations that would go to town meeting.
Thanks, Rick. I'm with you now.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to reconsider, and now did we vote that yet? Sorry.
Nope.
Okay, Kathleen.
I now vote yes. To
Okay,
reconsider.
John Noon,
Yes.
Rosemary,
yes,
Chuck,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so the reconsideration, will entertain a motion to concur with the town administrator's recommendations printed for line 116 and 121.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Okay, Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary.
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Did I get everybody? Okay, thank you. We're done with page 12.
Next page is 16.
Okay, page 16, again, we voted these lines. There were corrections in the amounts shown there. I will entertain a motion to reconsider line 116 and 126.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All right, roll call vote. Kathleen,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
yes,
Chuck,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. Then we'll entertain a motion. I will entertain a motion for the dollar amounts in lines 116 and 126 to concur with the town administrator's recommendation listed here on page 16.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathleen,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes, your voice sounds strange.
Does.
Darth Vader.
Yes, if they're calling me Rick.
Yeah, next now, thank you. Dave
Yes.
and John Galvin,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
And I think Chuck Colby votes yes.
Yes,
I think he does, huh?
the Darth Vader missed you. Hey, Rick,
Darth Vader's, yeah.
something's going on with your
Microphone.
microphone.
How's that?
Oh, boy, Rick. Oh,
It's really funny.
bad.
Let's give you a second to fix that. Just fiddle with something.
No, Rick, you got a problem with your
It's not
microphone.
your voice, it's your
No, it's your
microphone.
microphone, Rick.
Rick,
I'll try that.
try muting yourself and unmuting yourself again.
Is that better?
No.
No, but it's so funny.
Might not be a bad thing, Rick, though, you know?
You know, it gives you some authority here.
Sounds normal in this end. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Do you want me to log out and log back in?
That's probably a good idea.
That's probably the only way you're
Yeah.
gonna get it changed.
Yeah,
All right, well,
we'll wait for Rick.
If you don't see me again, Dave, you're in charge, just so you know.
Uh-oh. Come back.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh. Now I want to find out how I can make my voice like that. That was something.
That was interesting.
It was Darth Vader like.
All right, is this better?
you back, Rick? Absolutely, Rick.
It sounds like you, but it's not better because that was really cool.
That was cool. I don't know how it happened. All right, so here we are. Where were we in the process before we were interrupted by the Star Wars trilogy?
We
Did
just finished the vote on page 16.
Lines
Finished the
116,
vote.
120.
Yes.
Okay, Samantha, did you record the vote on that page?
Yes, I got it.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next page. Lincoln, please.
Next page is 29.
Okay, so 29, we actually have a question line item here on line 112. Salaries for fire. Town administrator recommends $3,139,980. It's a change of 2.98%. Questions on line 112.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Lincoln, you may still not be able to answer this question, but I asked at the whatever meeting we had this, what was it, May 3rd? Does this line include the position of the day deputy? Or is that still under negotiations?
It still is under negotiations.
I can take that as an answer.
Well,
Yes,
the dollar
it still
figure
is under
doesn't reflect.
negotiation.
So redirecting the question, Lincoln, the dollar figure that is recommended here does not include that expenditure?
That is correct.
Okay, does that answer your question a little?
Yes,
Kathleen?
yeah.
Okay.
It would increase something, because if you have a fire personnel now taking that deputy position, then there are other, that leaves all those shifts empty. So that's why that budget line would have to increase to afford monies available for those other shifts.
So if you'll note that there is an additional proposed appropriation in the article that would approve a ratified fire contract. And that can give you some kind of an idea as to how much this position would cost for a portion of the year. If that's a little bit more color that I can speak to, but it is certainly still the subject of
Are we adding a body?
No, so, well, yes, in terms of, so when this is implemented, because of, so the civil service would indicate, the civil service rules would indicate that this would provide for the promotion of a lieutenant to a captain's position, and very likely a firefighter to a lieutenant position, depending on who the successful candidate was in that. And then having that flow down so that it would eventually result in the addition of a firefighter, very likely, depending on who was chosen for particular positions within civil service.
So one other question, have we lost any bodies in the past 3 years?
So there's certainly been turnover, but there's
Yeah.
not been a net loss, no.
So we're actually adding a body on top of what we went through 3 or 4 years ago, correct? We're actually promoting within.
That's correct if the day deputy does occur, if that shift does occur in fiscal 22.
All right. That's the
Okay,
question.
does that answer your question now?
No, just concerned of adding another body to the fire department, which I don't have a problem with. However, sorry about the dog barking behind me. We're adding bodies to the fire department. We're promoting within. The overtime is still through the roof, which we have to look at. And what was the final budget this year they wanted to look forward for? Percentage-wise increase they wanted?
13%.
That's 13%. That's just a question for everybody in the finance committee and for the people watching this, obviously the finance committee meeting.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Oh.
Anybody else further discussion on line 112?
Just
Yeah.
some clear, oh, go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
David.
Rosemary. Go ahead.
No, it's okay, you go ahead. I'll go after you.
All right, well, I mean, if everybody remembers, this town, we approved an override so the fire chief could add an additional personnel one additional firefighter per shift. And the discussion was that it wasn't going to add to the operating budget because those monies were going to be taken from the ambulance fund. Well, the ambulance fund is now within the operating budget. So that extra person per shift is doing a dramatic effect to the Article 2. And, that should be considered when you make your vote.
And also, just one last thing, I consider the police department too, fire department essential to obviously the town. Now, I support both departments, but look at the police department too. We have to kind of share the budget too as well. Is exactly what Dave said is we went through that override position with the fire department earlier, a few years back. That's all.
Good points, both Dave and Al. Rosemary, you had something further?
Yeah, it's mostly clarification here. So to clarify, 2 years ago, we had negotiated a position with the fire and they postponed it, and we're possibly having that position recognized this year. And part of the reason for this increase is because they can no longer take from an ambulance account because the ambulance account now goes into the main free cash. Is this correct?
So that's generally correct. So there is, last year, there was a memorandum in July, I believe, July or August. There was a memorandum of agreement to bring the deputy chief out of the union on July 1st, this coming July 1st, in less than 2 months, a month and a half. And thus have a captain's position. And then because of who would likely be promoted because of the civil service, because of how civil service works, eventually flowing through so that a firefighter would be added. Effectively, a captain would be added, but eventually a firefighter would be added, depending on who's chosen for various promotions. One of the items under discussion now in contract negotiations is when the deputy chief will be coming out of the union and when that progression will occur. So I'll just leave it at that if I could.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
One
Thank you
other
for your
thing to
question.
consider on this line item too is well, with the deputy chief is this is going to be the first time in the town's history that we've had this position created. So, you know, it's again, just more facts to provide for your vote to this line item.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Anybody else want to chime in on the discussion here on line
Yeah.
112?
Yeah, Rick, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I just want everybody to remember that the chief is retiring. So we're going to have a new chief who is going to need all the assistance and experience and help that he can get. So to me, having having a deputy chief in there as well as a new chief is worth the amount that I saw in that article at the end, which I think was like $37,000 or something, if I'm correct, Lincoln. I don't have it in front of me. So, you know, we're going to have some changeover or a lot of changeover in this department, and having as much quality leadership is important.
Okay.
Just quickly. How many years ago did we negotiate this position and it's been pushed off at this point? Just due to budgetary things. So it's been at least 2 years. Is this correct?
I'm not
I
sure
think
when the
that-
discussion,
In my recollection, it's 2 years that it's.
Yeah,
been
that
It's
through.
2
sounds
years.
about right.
Okay. So 2 years ago, we recognized we needed this position. And there was financial issues. And then last year, we still recognized there was no issue to take it off the table. It continued on. So I think that says something as well as what John has just said, in my personal opinion.
Okay, Dave, did you have another comment, or Al? Go
No,
ahead,
I
Al.
didn't, but now
Oh,
that you
just-
bring it up, I'll say one more thing is that
Okay,
you have to remember, you know, every time we add positions, we are currently still, you know, I think we've done it 3 or 4 years straight now, where we are taking money from one-time revenue sources. So we're, you know, essentially we're working in a deficit in that sense. So, you know, every time we add salaries and increase salary line items, we continue to take away from one-time money, and that's not a recommended course of action.
I agree,
very
David.
good
Thank
point,
you.
Dave.
I agree.
Thank you.
Will we be including this into the override when we, you know, when we're considering an override so that we aren't taking it for one-time money? Any increases to the budget as David has recommended? I mean, I thought it was supposed to be a capital override, but with some of the decisions we've made, it looks like we might need to be more than a
Okay,
capital.
that probably is going a little beyond line 112 on page 29, but it definitely is related. I appreciate the comment.
Rick,
Al,
just lastly, you got the fire chief resigned, which is fine. We have a deputy chief in mind. Let's promote within, and that's all I say, promote within, and we can find someone, the right candidate with leadership that wants that position. There's plenty of, there's not very few fire chief positions open. I can guarantee you a lot of those, even under the captain's position, would be appointed probably by the police, the selectmen. So let's get a good qualified candidate in there, made by recommendation by Lincoln.
okay, Al, thank you for your comments.
One,
Would anybody
one
else like
last-
to,
yeah, Chuck would like
go
to.
ahead, Chuck?
One last, since we're all acting upon this. So if it seems like we might be having a new chief coming in, who's maybe, depending on his experience and whatnot, maybe not as experienced as Chief Greno, and he sounds like we're going to have maybe some help for him and a deputy chief. One thing I want to just keep at the front of the mind is, do we, for the people who will be negotiating his salary, do we jump him up to the same pay as the previous chief who had tons of experience and did a wonderful job? Or is this somebody, if he's coming in based on his experience, might come in at a lower level, and seeing that we'll have a deputy chief also kind of like a help there too, second in command. So I'd like people that are going to be working on that, keep that in the forefront of their mind. Thank you.
Okay, Chuck, thank you for your comments. And remember though, we're not talking about the chief's salary here. This is the salaries for the rest of the department. So
Understood.
anybody else further discussion? Okay, we prepared to vote this line. I'll entertain a motion for line 112 to read $3,139,980.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll
John
second.
Galvin seconds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes,
Dave,
Abstain.
and I will vote yes. Okay, did I miss anybody? No, thank you. All right, moving on to the next line.
Next is page 42.
Okay. So 42, we also had, there was a line 305 was questioned as well. I don't think you highlighted it, but I think the only reason why we questioned it, we didn't vote it. As far as I know, we did not vote line 305 once the page stopped scrolling. Was because of the fact that we were unsure of what the town of Hanson was going to do, and if in fact that would lead the school committee to revote the assessment. So does anybody else recall us questioning line 305?
I recall
I think-
that.
I do.
Okay, so just to be sure, I think we should revote, I mean, not revote, I think we should vote line 305 because it was a question line and it wasn't inclusive in the non-question lines. Does anybody have a problem with it?
No.
Okay. All right, so line 305, discussion.
I have
And
a
again,
discussion. There was
Yeah.
new guidance that came in for ESSER. That said it's supposed to have, and of course, a big chunk of this is subsidized by ESSER, but there was supposed to be public input on the usage of it, and I don't believe it was. We have, and of course, we had the question of the vote, and we never got anything back for that. So do we have any information if we still have an issue with this particular line or not?
We have
And
had
the
no
funding?
communication, that there's any challenge to the vote that the school committee took setting the assessment at this number.
And the use of this, but the money used to subsidize it. It just came in last week, the guidelines, and it's clear it's supposed to have public input. So I have some questions about it. So that's all. I guess
Okay.
there's no answers, no answers.
Okay, very good. Good point. All right, anybody else further questions on line 305? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion for line 305 to read $16,104,903.
I
So
move
moved.
that number. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on line 305. Seeing none, roll call vote. Kathleen,
Yes,
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Abstain.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
John Galvin, did I get you?
Yes, you did.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. Did I miss anybody? Okay, thank you. We'll move to line 323. Questions, non-mandated busing.
I have a question, and this is to Lincoln. I have yet to receive any communication from the school department, and I actually don't expect to until the new business manager is in place, and I'm looking forward to John Stanbrook's leadership. I think John Tuffy's been terrific, so I don't see that we're going to have any movement in this line, Lincoln, unless you and Jeff Simonek continue to have discussions on what they're doing to try to reduce this non-mandated busing account. It's gone up by 2.6%. It's almost $500,000. It's an awful lot of money to go unquestioned.
Yeah, I have not had any further conversations with the superintendent about this. since our last conversation about it.
Okay, thank you.
Based on that, I'd like to make a motion that we change that figure to be a level funded figure instead of the 2.63%.
I'll second that one.
Oh, you've seconded it.
Want to third it?
Okay,
That's fine.
so
Okay.
right now we have, let's see, I think we have a motion and a second to accept the dollar figure or not? Do we
I don't-
not?
No, we did not.
No.
To level
No,
fund it.
level fund it is what,
Okay, so we have a
motion to level
and a
fund, it
second.
was seconded.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to level fund non-mandated busing. Further discussion.
I just think this is an excellent way of putting some heat on the school committee and the school department to try to realize some cost savings. It's as if, since the selectmen want to provide this, there's no leverage that we have other than to reduce our recommendation at town meeting.
Rick, can I
Okay.
say one thing? 100% back, Kathleen, absolutely. There's no accountability to this right now. I don't know who's pushing this agenda here. That type of amount of money, over $500,000 or close to $500,000, and they go up with 3%. It's absolutely asinine. Nobody rides the bus anymore. My kids that went to high school for 3 years, actually got one going in next year. He's not gonna drive the bus, he'll drive his bicycle. This is gotta change. Pay to play. Sorry. You wanna
Okay.
ride the bus, pay.
I have to concur. I think we've been looking at this and the finance committee has discussed this for as long as I have been on the finance committee.
Yeah.
We keep getting stonewalled every time we try to make some recommendation. I understand the reluctance of the Board of Selectmen to make a policy decision to implement a pay-to-ride program. I understand it. I get it. And there's some resistance, and the safety of the children obviously is just as paramount to the finance committee as it is to the Board of Selectmen and the regional school district. However, I have to concur with taking a stand at some point. And to be perfectly honest, this course of action was recommended by the previous town administrator 2
Yes.
years ago when we were talking about it. And for the purpose of discussion, it was his suggestion that a modification or a change be recommended by the finance committee to get the discussion to the town hall floor and get the will of the voters. So I applaud your motion, and I will ask for further discussion if anybody has it.
I have a comment,
Yep.
Rick, if
Go
I
ahead.
may.
Go ahead,
John.
John.
So first of all, I'm 100% behind this. Absolutely, I think it's the right move. I do have a question, I guess. If town meeting goes ahead and agrees with us and we level fund this, does this invalidate the assessment and kick it back to the school committee? Because it is part of the assessment. So that's a question that I have.
It's not part of the assessment.
It's a standalone line item. Absolutely
It's
doesn't.
not part of the assessment.
Not part of the
Okay.
assessment.
Okay. Even better. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why, again, we continue to have this discussion. And when we were chastised, I guess, for continuing the discussion, going back a month or so ago, it was stated that the finance committee will continue to discuss this line item as long as it's part of the budget. So again, all, policy decisions reflective of the Board of Selectmen aside, this is a recommendation from the finance committee on line 323 and nothing else. So
I want to know the potential impact of making this. I agree with it, but I want to hear the impact. Will they shorten buses, or is there a contractual issue?
Well,
Any sort of impact?
They'll have to find the money somewhere.
Well, that's a good segue.
It's exactly, they have to find the money somewhere. Will they take it from
Well-
there's a lot of remediation that has to go on.
Hold on, if I may continue, there was a meeting, a couple months ago, didn't the school committee discuss this a little bit? And they said by changing the routes up, they thought they might be able to save about 60,000 a year. If I
Yes,
remember.
you're correct. They did say
So-
that.
absolutely. And this puts the onus back on them to do what they
Time to
said they
get
were going to do.
to work.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
I agree, and that was the takeaway I from that
Yeah.
meeting.
I was, yeah, when that was brought up, I was happy that at least they could save a good $60,000.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, that's it, because they didn't do that. Did they not do that because they didn't even bother? Did they feel like, or was
No,
there
obviously
something that
nobody's done
occurred?
anything about it.
Right.
Nobody's
Well, I just
looked
wanted
at
to,
it.
I guess I want to just get some feedback. That's all. That's all.
That's
Yeah.
my feedback.
All right, Very nice. We appreciate
As
your,
it stands,
your
as it
sentiment.
stands, this is what they're looking for.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Rick,
Do
I'd
we have
just like
further
to clarify
discussion?
my motion. So just to echo what Chuck said, right. My motion is not necessarily based on a pay to ride program, but it's based on the meeting that they presented to us, that if they were to they have the ability to better manage the program, and that better management would result in efficiencies that could be up to $60,000-$70,000, right?
Bingo.
I'll concur with Dave.
Very good, Dave. All right,
Yep.
thank you very much.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, is the committee ready to move on this line 323?
Yes.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion for line 323 to read $401,177. Is that the level funded dollar amount, Dave, that you were looking for?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second.
I think we
All
already.
right, further discussion on line 323. Seeing none, we'll move to roll call. Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Abstain. I don't have enough information.
John Galvin.
Yes.
Kathleen, did I get you?
No, and I say yes.
Okay, sorry. Sometimes people move around here on this. And John Noon,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. All right, Lincoln, are you able to put that dollar figure right in this document or not?
Not in this,
Okay.
but you'll have it in your next version. Yep.
Excellent, thank you very much. Moving to the next question line item or reconsideration.
The next item is on page 49.
I
Okay,
questioned
please.
this.
Page 49, okay, line item 210, questions.
We were supposed to see savings here, and we've got 2020. And then, a jump that I don't see savings in the light system. We got a new lighting, new everything. And even with the recommendations, it's an increase. Can you give us a sense of why?
Yeah, so we definitely have seen savings from the historical expenditure. There is still a question, and this is actually a reduction that I give all the credit in the world to Ken for, because he actually identified this as something that could be reduced.
Okay.
It may well continue to be less. There is one outstanding question. To summarize, there are a series of lights that that were not owned by the town prior to the conversion to LED. However, the entity that was doing the conversion, that the town hired to do the conversion, these are privately paid for lights. The entity that was doing the conversion just went ahead and did every single light. As far as I can tell, they basically went ahead and converted every single light. Now, National Grid is wanting the town to take ownership of those, or threatening to remove that equipment and attempting to charge the town to return it to their previous equipment or their LED equipment or something, National Grid's. We're working to get a resolution on that. I can assure you that the town is definitely never going to pay National Grid, as far as I'm concerned, for returning it to what their what their equipment was.
Okay.
However, that has to be resolved. That's one portion of it. I do believe, I think we also want to get a little bit more experience on a longer term about what there are definitely savings there from 100,000. I'd like to see another year or two to see, can it actually come down to 39,000 or should it maybe be 50,000? But I do think it's very possible that in future years, we'll have further reductions here or recommended reductions.
Okay, so let me just get some clarification. In 2020, when it was 29,000 or 40,000, we were told that we would pay a large amount of money, and I don't have it on me now, to get reductions. We would be paying less. Then it went up to 100,000. And it said it was temporary, and here we are, it's almost double our original, we're gonna have a discount price.
Oh, it's
And now you're saying, so we already had problems with the light bulbs, and now you're saying they went on and did lights that we don't own that are on private roads, and that they're wanting us to pay for those?
They're not on private roads. They're on public roads that private entities paid to install and have been paying the amounts for. But I want to be clear. So the amount appropriated in fiscal year 20, I believe it was 100,000. So the savings aren't, so in other words, the savings are realized, some savings were realized there in the expended amount, but not yet in the appropriated amount. So I'll go back and we can go back and look, and I'll have that answer regarding, before the conversion, how much the amount that was actually spent was, but it was certainly far in excess of 39,000. It was more approaching the 100,000 prior to the conversion. So now we've experienced, at least 1 year here of the actual savings. Now the appropriated amount in fiscal year 2022 will reflect those savings. But we've already realized those savings in terms of the actual expended amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think we really need to really look at this line. I mean, for this year, I guess, if you think you're going to have some behind, but I think this is something we need to look into.
So I think Ken has some feedback as well.
Yeah.
I have those numbers handy for the budgeted and the actuals for the last several years.
Okay, can you put them up? Or?
So, not without toggling back and forth between a bunch of different screens.
Okay, just say them out loud.
FY 18 was budgeted 140. Actual spending was 162. So we had to do a transfer at the end of the year to cover it.
Okay.
FY 19, the budget went up to 143 and the actual expenditure was about 169. So we had to do another transfer to cover that.
Yep.
Then we started in FY 19 was when the project started to take place. So that's when we dropped the budget to 100.
Yep.
And then the savings really kicked in to the 39,015 figure that's there. So we kept the budget at 100,000 for FY 21, just because we wanted to have more data to make sure that we'd be able to cover it.
Yep.
And right now we're trending toward right around 45,000 this year.
45, okay.
So getting between 1 and 2 years worth of data, I felt like that 100 could come down, not to like 40 something, but I think 60 seemed to be reasonable.
Okay.
And with another year of data, maybe we'll see what happens.
Okay, can you tell me how much what the total cost of that project was to convert? What that was? That was a large number. I remember.
That was in a couple of articles, I think,
Yeah,
Rosemary.
that was.
Yeah, it was.
So I don't
but
think Ken can
total,
pull that out of his
that's what I
hat.
want to know.
But we only spent
We
200,000.
made a big investment. So when we're looking at this, was this investment included, was it, you're saying it's dropping, but I remember it being large. And then
It sounds like our ROI is going to take a few more years for sure. Then maybe.
Yeah, I guess what we're
but
saying.
truck
And by then will we need new light bulbs?
Chuck, didn't we have to replace all the cabling for most of it? Most of
there
it was
was some
over $200,000.
issues.
I questioned
Yeah,
Frank over a year ago.
Right. It started out as a simple project, I believe, if I remember correctly, and it turned into
Over $200,000.
like a lot of other projects. Once you start, you open it up, you find a lot more to do.
Sure.
So it's probably gonna take a few more years before we really get a good return on it.
But that's before, and now we have this putting in lights on private, road parts.
Well,
So
that's something Lincoln's working through.
Well,
So,
Yeah.
and I want to be clear, they're not on, that's a small portion of this, but
Yeah.
I'm just informing the committee, there may well be, we're working that through, but it's absolutely not on any private roads. These are
private,
these are lights that were put up on public roads at the expense and at the request of a private entity. They had been paying those bills, but it's definitely not on any private way.
Okay.
Okay,
Just
and just,
clarify.
Could I comment for a moment?
go ahead.
Back when I was on the finance committee, when we used to have somebody go around and light the gas lights every night.
Well, you're going way back.
The first beginnings of 2.5, I was on the finance committee then. We started shutting off town lights, getting it down to like intersections, places that were determined to be dangerous to have unlit. Homeowners could purchase the lights if they wanted to continue to have a street light out in front of their house, and it was not going to be one that the town would support. That's how we get to the private ownership, as it's been clearly indicated, not private property, but public situations where the town determined it was safe enough to shut off a light. And usually that meant only lights that the town would support at an intersection.
Not even that, John. I'll concur with you, John. They did it on Forest Street. It was a school zone, even though there's no kids traveling back and forth at night. They just shut most of those lights off. They put caps on top of the lights to cover them so the lights wouldn't go on. All the neighbors complained, and we got the lights turned back on about 3 years ago.
Okay, so one more thing, Lincoln, and I think there was some discussion too, because of the fact that these lights were upgraded. There was a possibility that the people who own them would then reimburse the town for the expense to change them over. Has there been any success with that aspect?
No, so right now, the lights that have been paid for privately, the town is not paying for them. They were converted. And the conversation with National Grid is whether or not we're going to take those at all.
Okay, so the town isn't trying to negotiate with the individual people to
No.
try to get reimbursed?
No,
No, okay.
no,
I see.
we wouldn't do
Okay.
that. No.
All right, very good. Any further questions on this line?
Yes,
210?
Rick. I'd just like to make a comment and say thank you to Lincoln for this, what's new information. Being on the finance committee during the period when that article was approved and being on the capitals committee, there was a million questions about why that project went over budget. And I think Lincoln just answered it for us there, because the prior town administrator would not answer, nor did he provide the information that there were, what Lincoln said, that they were privately owned lights that were converted over, which probably likely resulted in the budget overrun that required an additional article.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we're ready to move this question. I'll entertain a motion for line 210 to read $60,000.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on line 210. Seeing none? Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
yes,
Rosemary?
Yes.
John Noon?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
John Galvin?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. Great discussion. Thank you very much for all of the questions and the answers, Lincoln. Very helpful to gain more knowledge about that.
Next is page 54.
Okay, so page 54, we have lines 121, 157, and 131 that were amended subsequent to our vote. I will entertain a motion to reconsider line 121, 157, and 131.
So moved.
So, second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reconsider. Discussion. Seeing none? Roll
No,
call.
I wanted to know, why is the social worker at the Council on Aging decreased?
Sure. So that the person who had been in that position recently retired. And the Council on Aging Director and I interviewed I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, two candidates at the end. She interviewed more candidates in a preliminary round. And the great new candidate that was hired was started at a lower rate to reflect her new hire rather than the years of service that the prior person had.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Further questions? Okay, so we're voting on reconsideration. Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
yes,
Al,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so I will entertain a motion now for line 121, 157, and 131 to reflect the town administrator's recommendation dollar figures on this page.
I move the recommendations.
second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, Kathleen,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
John Noon,
yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, that will do it for that page.
Next is page 57.
Okay, page 57, line item 999, miscellaneous human services. Questions?
Yeah, Rick, what is it?
Someone had a
So-
question on this line the last time we.
I think it was Rosemary.
Was Rosemary.
No, it wasn't me. It wasn't.
Okay, well,
That's all.
it could have
50%
been
is a lot of
Ralph.
money, no?
Yeah, I can clarify. So the $3,000 appropriation has been for Whitman Counseling Center. And that is a longstanding appropriation to supplement their work. It's part of BAMSI, I believe, the Brockton Area Multi-Services. The $500 is for Plymouth County 4-H, the county extension. And the $6,000 is for High Point, the substance abuse counselors. And so the reflection of, so it's net neutral amongst the three of them,
Okay.
but the reflection to bring $3,000 to the substance abuse to High Point was just a reflection of that might be more of an area in the opioid epidemic of need.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Liam.
all right, excellent answer.
Yep.
So line 4418999, I guess we should be specific because they all end in 3 nines. I will entertain, and if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for line 4418999 to read $9,000.
So
Motion.
moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this?
Just a quick question. So I understand it looks to me as if it's a consolidation. And so does that mean that the services provided under line 4414 are now going to be funded under 4418?
No, so the, and this is something that we'll need to reflect in the future line item detail. On the consolidated budget on the warrant, each of the individual entities, the 2 entities now that would be receiving funding are identified. It just, that needs to flow through to the line item detail document, and we'll make sure that is in there. But what would actually be voted by town meeting is specific, that it's $500 for Plymouth County extension, and the $9,000 for High Point.
So the services provided by whatever 4414 is, that no longer has any funding.
So that would not receive funding under the proposed budget.
And what is the heading for that one, Lincoln?
So that in the, just a moment, let me pull up the consolidated budget, just one second.
Maybe that was Whitman Will?
Correct. Whitman, excuse me, no, that's, yeah, Whitman Counseling Center. Just one moment.
BMC, yeah, BMC.
That's BMZ.
Correct.
That's
So
BMC.
that would help citizens to get mental help if they did not have the funding. And now we're transferring everything to the
Basic.
Whitman will. Is that correct?
That is correct.
No.
Okay, and
We seemed
Lincoln-
kind of balanced between two different needs for the community before. Now it seems sort of consolidated to one need.
Yeah, and I think the thinking is that when the Whitman Counseling Center had originally received an appropriation, my understanding is that it was not part of BAMSI, a larger, organization with perhaps some other financial resources. And so this is to reflect that, that's the reasoning, that this is reflecting the fact that now it is part of a larger organization that may have other resources and that this other organization may not.
Okay.
That's the reasoning.
Okay,
That sounds logical.
Liz, is it a contractual thing with BAMSI?
What did you say?
Is it a contractual thing with BAMSI?
It's a good question. And is there, I'm gonna say that I think we have a selectman whose wife is in the Whitman will. So I don't know if I feel comfortable with this. I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel as if there's different needs in this community, and even if you have different resources, you're not meeting one need. You're sort of putting everything in one space. So that's just my opinion.
okay.
There's particularly now with mental health issues, and being prevalent because of the COVID, loneliness with our seniors, children having issues. I don't know.
Lincoln, was your explanation inclusive of the fact that people who require the services that are outlined in line 4414 have the opportunity to get those services somewhere else, and that is part of the justification? Is that what your answer was?
Yeah, I think in part, that could certainly be part of the reasoning. I mean, I don't, from what I know of, I don't know all of the ins and outs of BAMSI's operations, financial operations, right? However, I do know that it is a large organization, and, certainly in the context of its entire budget, $3,000 is not a large piece. I couldn't tell you what the entirety of the BAMSI, annual budget is, but in the context of that budget, yeah, $3,000 is not a large amount.
Okay,
So
so-
let's look at the history of this line. Let's look at the history. BMZ was already cut. So before, we don't know if it will affect anybody or how that goes. And there's other issues. I think it's kind of fuzzy, and
Okay, so maybe I just one follow-up, Lincoln. Did you get any recommendations for anyone else when you made the recommendation to transfer the money from 4414 into 4418? I mean, is this a decision you made entirely on your own?
This was a recommendation that I made to the Board of Selectmen without previous input from anyone.
Okay, all right.
I assure you
Okay,
that.
anybody else, any questions?
That's the last
further?
question. Was it really a contractual relationship with them?
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? All right, we'll move to vote then. I will entertain a motion for line 4418.999 to read $9,000. Do we have a motion? Anybody? Motion to accept the recommendation.
I'll move it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
John Galvin, no second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Okay, we'll now move to a roll call. Kathleen,
I abstain.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
I abstain, I don't have enough information.
Al,
Dane,
Dave,
Abstain.
John Noon,
Abstain.
John Galvin,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Okay, moving on to the next question line item, or the next motion to reconsider. It is a motion to consider a recommendation on line 117, page 58, custodial library. The recommendation is for that line to read 0. Questions?
I'm the one that questioned this. And I remember when the presentation by the librarian, whose name eludes me right now, she referred to the fact that the custodial services that are provided by the town custodian was insufficient, and she was looking for a part-time custodian to do the custodial work. And I see that it's gone. Is our town custodian available to maintain the custodial needs of the library?
Marcy Walsh O'Connor is
Thank you.
the librarian, and yeah, I blame the fact that you couldn't remember her name for the fact that it's been so long since we met with these department heads.
Yeah.
So your question directed at Lincoln? Is
I
that-
think so, yeah.
So a couple things. So on a longer term basis, I'll make a prediction that in the next year, with the planned retirement of the current facilities manager, that there'll be some efforts on my part to reorganize how we provide custodial services and facilities management in general in the town, beginning in fiscal year 2023. So that's one piece of it. I do feel strongly that individual, so if these monies were appropriated, that person presumably would report to the library director. And I don't think custodians should be reporting directly to someone who that isn't their area of expertise.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's part of it. The other thing in the interim, in the immediate term, one thing that Marcy and I have spoken about is I'm definitely in support of using CARES Act monies to supplement cleaning until December 31st, the date through which they may be spent. And I've asked her in the immediate term to put together a plan for what kind of cleaning services she believes are needed through December 31st. And if it's reasonable, I definitely would strongly recommend implementation of that through December 31st.
Thanks, Lincoln. That's great.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Al,
the thought, we got what was it? How much a $400,000, $360,000 worth of salaries going in there. We can't get a custodian in there. This is my thinking is with the town. We can't share spread the wealth with other departments. This is my concern. We need to do this. I'm all in favor of increasing their budget. They need it.
okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody else on this line? Okay, seeing no further discussion, I will entertain a motion for line 117 to read 0.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Okay, Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Al,
Yeah.
John Galvin,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
John Noon,
Yes.
Rosemary. I guess that was a yes. Your mute never came off, but. Did you vote yes, Rosemary?
Yes, I do. I have
Okay.
somebody not wanting to go to bed. Throwing a
Okay.
little bit of a temper
All right.
tantrum, so I'm sorry. I've got mute on.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, so that takes care of line 117 on the library budget. Next line.
page 68.
Okay, page 68 on the retirement, line 575, vacation pay for term employees. The town administrator recommends the dollar figure being $42,355. Questions? Line 575.
Yeah, that was myself who questioned it, and if you guys remember, Lincoln did give us some information on it. However, I will have to go back to it as the minutes that Samantha took reflect my concerns and disappointment that this continues to be a large number, whereas anybody else who was on the committee, I thought it was going to be a shrinking number, and this wasn't going to be such a big number, and there were things that were going to be changing. So I did have a question that had part of my question about like if the assistant town administrator is under contract and we got other people under contract. I would be curious, Lincoln, you did say that some of this had to be spent because it was contractual. Is that information clearly spelled out, and is that information available
As far as in the
contract?
where it is contractual, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So the current contracts that management have in town is up on the website.
Okay.
So certainly anybody can peruse them. I can certainly say that when there are future contracts, I know I will certainly be a very strong advocate for there not being any vacation buyback at the close of them.
Right. Now, what about, that brings me to a question about the current new line under in your department of a vacation buyback opportunity. That to me, as I look at it, it almost says like you can do it a little at a time instead of a lot at the end. So I'm just curious, will that be something that falls with new employees, new contracts too?
It wouldn't be something that I would intend to pursue in contract negotiations.
Okay.
Okay, Chuck, your point is very well taken. This is something we've had a concern for many years about, the ballooning cost of vacation pay for retiring employees buying back. So I appreciate the fact that you questioned the line and that the discussion continues, because I would hate to see us taking another step backwards. But again, this is something that would fall under the responsibility of the Board of Selectmen. But I think it could be made clear to them that the Finance Committee is concerned with the financial implications if they're thinking about modifying their policy with, contract negotiations inclusive of vacation buyback.
Very well said. Thank you.
Okay, I can certainly convey that to the Board of Selectmen at the meeting tomorrow night. So any further questions on line 575, Kathleen?
I have a question, but it's more of a historic question. It's my recollection that a year ago, the director of the Council of Aging was retiring and she wanted to use the so-called vacation buyback, but was told that policy had changed and she wasn't eligible for it. So it was either use it or lose it. And so she did. So is it because someone has it explicitly written in their contract and knows that they can implement the vacation buyback that some people are able to do this, whereas someone else is willing to say, oh, okay, I didn't know that? Did the director of the Council of Aging a year ago, when she wanted to retire using her vacation pay buyback, was she eligible for it and she just didn't know it? And I know that's not really germane to this line item, but at the time I thought, gee, this is sort of mean. She's done a good job for the town and all she wanted to do is what other people had previously done.
So I don't know specifically about her situation.
Yep.
But just to be clear, so if there's a specific explicit contract requirement that a certain amount of buyback occurs, then we'd have to follow that.
Yep.
But further to that, whatever outstanding vacation someone has, whether they retire or terminate for some other reason, they move on to another position, whatever, we're by law required to pay that out. The question is, how much is it? and how much is able to be carried, and that, the corollary of that question is, how much is able to be carried over year to year?
Okay,
That's the big question.
So I can only assume, I don't know her specific situation, but I can only assume that, she was only, I'm sure, certainly hope, and I would certainly think, I'm sure this happened, that all of her outstanding vacation at the time of her retirement was paid out to her.
okay.
Question is how much she had at that time. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and that was a good remembrance of that, Kathleen, because I remember that also. And to me, I read this whole situation over the past number of years as a situation that we've been told has been evolving and changing, being written out of contracts, negotiations, so on and so forth. So maybe, that's why it kind of turned out that way for her. I believe, I can't remember, I think Frank had said there was a new policy of maybe a 4-week carryover, but I've
No,
been
it's not.
somebody I've been
9
in.
days, Colby, 9 days.
Okay, 9 days. Thank you. I've been in private, the private sector for years and years, and never has there been anything that generous. It's usually, 4 weeks, maybe you can carry 2, use them or lose them. And I'm not trying to be spiteful. I just see it as a money that we can't afford to be just spending out. We keep kicking and scratching, and everybody says every dollar counts. So I'm looking at it totally as a financial implication, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck.
Question, Lincoln, just a question. Now, is that policy in place right now with regards to 9 days, 9 sick days or PTO time, what you want to call with the town of Whitman, with the employees that newly hired a year ago?
It is. If someone is under collective bargaining or an individualized employment contract,
right,
it's not necessarily in place, but certainly the goal is to get there.
That's right.
But for anyone who doesn't fall into either of those categories, yes, it's in place now.
So you're saying
Okay, John.
every contract employees has different vacation days, or is that negotiated through collective bargaining?
Well, it certainly would be negotiating collective bargaining, and it would be negotiated in an individual employment contract, yes.
So we just went through all that with retired fire chief and fire police chief. Is that going to change?
That would be my intention.
Fair enough.
Okay, John Noon, did you have a comment? I saw your hand. Were you just adjusting your screen? Nothing? Okay.
I had a quick question. So are
Okay.
we saying, just clarification, are we saying that this amount is for a contract that we currently have? You're saying that, vacation pay for term employees, right? So we're covering something that we can't implement the same
It's money that
restrictions
has, it's money that has to be funded to let this person retire and be paid out. As Rick has said before, the auditors flagged this as an unfunded liability.
Liability.
So that's
Okay.
why Frank put the line in last year, and last year it was up around $72,000 and so on. So I believe that's accurate. Is that correct, Lincoln?
Yeah, so I want to be clear, this is not for any individual employee per se.
It's for anybody who
It's
might be retiring.
for any employee who might be retiring. That said, we already know that it will exceed this, and departmental budgets will need to make up the difference to the, where monies are owed. But this is a start to funding it for all employees, not any specific employee per se.
Okay, so we had an employee that retired last year that we said, no, you have to use it. But for the ones that are retiring this year, we're not going to be saying that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It depends on if their individual employment contract requires a certain amount be paid out, then it will be paid out. I can only
Okay.
assume, I don't know the exact specifics of the retiring.
Of the contract. Okay, so it has to do with the contract. Thank you.
It has to do with the contract. I can only assume that the retiring council on aging director, fell under the, certainly whatever amount that she had remaining was paid out per the law. But I can only assume that she didn't have a larger amount because she did not have a contract.
Okay. Any further questions on line 575?
No, just lastly, it's not what we were led to believe though, Lincoln, and it's not your issue, and it is your issue now. Led to believe that situation wouldn't happen again. We paid annuities out for many top officials for the town of Whitman, and obviously we're going right back to where we started. That's all. I'll throw it out there. That's the
Okay,
situation. We're not talking hourly employees. We're talking salaried, high-paid employees. That's all. Just
Yeah,
throw it out there.
we were told that there were a few more left, I think, and I think that the ones that were left were Greno, Martin, and, there were a few more left, so, in fairness to the situation, we were told that there were a few more people left under the old contract, that we didn't have any change.
all right, thank you. All right, anybody else? Good questions, good comments. I will now entertain a motion for line 575 to read 42,355.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
No,
Al,
No,
Rosemary,
yes,
Dave,
No.
John Noon,
Reluctantly, yes.
John Galvin,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay. Lincoln, before we move on from this page, could I just ask you for the information that you're going to forward to the Board of Selectmen in advance of tomorrow night's meeting? Could you leave the highlighted items that we have been discussing tonight on the budget that you're going to forward to them? That's under the heading of my report.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
That way, at least I will have some, thing to jog my memory about the discussions that we have and the concerns we have. This is one of the long-term concerns that the Finance Committee has, and I want to make sure we give that information to the Board of Selectmen, that's all.
I'll leave the yellow, but not the green, right?
Excellent.
That's your intention, correct?
Yellow, not the green, yep.
Rick, quickly, can you get a list of people, any more contracts that we have to? And then we'll kind of, because after that, I won't, I'll be right there with Chuck, just to, basically to hold people accountable to that.
Okay, so Rosemary, are you looking for further information from the town administrator? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, further, sorry, not to the town administrator, just a list of how many more contracts that are
may
unchangeable.
fall under that.
Yeah, that fall under that, so that, we can make our decision.
We can get a little more specific information, then there's a couple more every time we ask, right?
Where it would be more than, because
I think there's only
I guess
one
what you're
more
saying
now.
is where it'd be more than 9 days. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes,
Yes.
more than the 9 days, just exactly.
Simple enough.
All right, we are ready then to move on from page 68.
I have a quick question, Rick.
Go ahead,
I'm
Kathleen.
referencing the minutes from the May 3rd meeting. And I have that on page 59, we had a question on line 1001-124.
Okay, we'll check my notes too.
I think that was from Mr. Noon, and I
Yes.
believe he later said that this question was answered and he rescinded that.
And it was.
Okay.
So did we vote the line item then? It wasn't the question line, and then it should have been inclusive in the lines that we voted, right?
I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next, I believe, are the last two pages. Is that correct? Oh, no. Do that one.
Yep. That's correct. This was 68. We just did that.
Okay. We did.
And 73.
Okay, so 73 and 74, I believe, is highlighted as well, Lincoln?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
so that was I highlighted all of those. And my concern really isn't those expenditures. My concern is that we are no longer voting on the revenue with the new way that we're voting. We used to have the enterprise fund. We used to vote on a balanced budget in which we were voting on both the revenues and the expenditures for the enterprise fund. We're no longer doing that. My concern is that with the current voted upon rate increase with the sewer, that there is a significant revenue increase and no expenditure increase. So my comments here when it comes to town meeting really aren't going to show up here. They're really going to show up in the discussion of that article when that's voted, because I want the sewer commission to explain to the town why they've gone ahead and raised the sewer rates when they're not going to have any expenditures for specifically this year and most likely next year, yet they've increased the rates. So, I did receive the revenue projections for the sewer. They are significant, and they will make a significant profit, quote. But again, it's really not any issue with these expenditures. I only did it so that I could make sure I got the revenue projections, and I'll bring it up at town meeting when the time comes at the sewer. I'm all for the sewer. I just want to put the pressure on the commission to explain why they have increased the rates now when there's no expenditures next year at all for the sewer project. And, so I would move to go forward to approve all of those lines that I challenged last week.
Okay, so we have a motion by John Galvin to concur with the town administrator recommendations, inclusive of all lines on page 73 and 74. Is
I'll
that
second.
okay? John Galvin, does that describe your motion?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your
Yes.
second, Chuck. Okay, further discussion on pages 73 and 74 and the water sewer budget. John, thank you for your explanation as well. I will entertain, we have the motion, we have the second. No further discussion. We'll move to roll call. Kathleen?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
John Noon?
Yes.
John Galvin?
Abstain.
Dave?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, that concludes right, there are no further lines on that page.
Correct.
Page 74 had the following 311 to 286. Those were inclusive of the motion and the recommendations as we just voted. So, question now for Lincoln regarding the difference in the budget totals reflective of the recommendations of the Finance Committee. What is a recommendation to keep a balanced budget? What we do with the difference between the non-mandated busing line? Put into capital stabilization, is that what your recommendation would be?
Yeah, or I know my recommendation would be that if town meeting adopted the recommendation from the Finance Committee, that that approximately $10,000 stay in free cash.
Stay in free cash, okay. Okay.
I have a question on that, Rick.
Go ahead, Jim.
Lincoln, so now that we have a difference between the FinCom recommendation and the Board of Selectmen's recommendation, whose budget on town floor is included in Article 2, and who would need to make the motion to change it? So for instance, I know specifically in Hanson, the town moderator made it clear that they were using the FinCom's budget. The previous year, he made it clear they were using the Board of Selectmen's budget. So there is a budget that is inclusive in what the town would recommend. And then there was a budget that somebody's going to have to make a motion to change. So who makes that motion? The FinCom or the Board of Selectmen to change on what the actual people will be voting on for non-mandated busing?
The recommendations that go to town hall floor are always the Finance Committee's recommendations. That is
Yeah, that's
never,
what they should be.
That's not my question. My question is, what is town meeting voting on? So if nobody challenges that line and it goes through, does it go through with the FinCom recommendation or does it go through with the Board of Selectmen's recommendation?
So I
We own the
think,
Article 2. FinCom owns the Article 2.
Let's
And-
let Lincoln
Yeah.
answer
So-
the question first.
so I think the question, my answer to that question would be sort of embedded in John's question, which is that I think ultimately probably that's a decision to be made by the moderator, frankly. Because the Board of Selectmen voted a warrant, finalized a warrant with its budget numbers in there. What the bylaws indicate, as the committee knows, is that the Finance Committee's recommendation is noted in the margin. It will absolutely be so. My understanding, I wasn't here in the past. My understanding from speaking with several folks is that it has not always been the case that, it is just, I can't speak to every year. I wasn't here. But nevertheless, the law is clear that the warrant, with the exception of petition articles, what is on the warrant is the purview of the Board of Selectmen. And they have voted a warrant that has a number. So the way it is, that number is going to be on there. What the other number that is going to be on there is obviously the Finance Committee recommendations per the town of Whitman's bylaws. But under the current circumstances, both numbers will be on there.
Okay, so it is a good question, and a question, wait a minute, Rosemary, let me just chime in here, because I've had this discussion with Lincoln ad nauseum for the entire budget cycle. There has never been a selectman budget presented to town meeting. There has never been, in the town of Whitman, a selectman budget on the warrant. So this would be the first time that there is a choice. The recommendations of the Finance Committee are the recommendations that are presented to town meeting. If the Board of Selectmen feels strongly about the different number that is in the budget as presented by the town administrator, they then would have to make request an amendment to the budget, because the recommendations presented to town meeting are the Finance Committee recommendations. There's no gray area there. So I'm concerned, and I have made this known to Lincoln throughout the process, that we are presenting a budget with Board of Selectmen recommendations. Even though we just went through this entire spreadsheet, there are no Board of Selectmen recommendations on that spreadsheet, right? It's your recommendations that are on there.
To be clear, that is one amendment that needs to happen to that. These are absolutely the Board of Selectmen's recommendations in that column. That is something that we need to work with our accounting company, the software company, to change the name of that column. But that column is absolutely the Board of Selectmen's recommendations. That is what they have voted. So yes, it still says town administrator recommendations, but they are also the Board of Selectmen's recommendations.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen's proposed budget.
All right, so again, this is a discussion that I will bring up with the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night. I have had a conversation with Selectman Justin Evans, who also served on this Finance Committee. There have been many members of the Board of Selectmen who have served on the Finance Committee. And Justin was pretty clear that there should not be Selectmen recommendations presented on town hall floor. The board, the Finance Committee recommendations are the recommendations presented to town meeting. Those are the ones that are voted.
If I may, since I've been on this committee for 6 odd years now, I always remember it just as it would be listed as department request and then FinCom recommendation. There was never 2 lines of recommendation, whether it's town administrator or selectman. It was department request, FinCom recommendation. I'm pretty sure that's how it's been.
There shouldn't be multiple budgets presented to town meeting. Go ahead, Rosemary.
Can I just mention, because I did go over this and I looked into it. The job of a Finance Committee is financial oversight. And every town needs that level of financial oversight. What the recommendation right now is that there is no financial oversight, that you're going to bypass financial oversight. And I have to question if that's legal. And I would have you go to council, because when I'm reading it, it is kind of vague, but you do require financial oversight. So I don't believe a moderator can overturn financial oversight. So I would be really careful about that. And I would try to create that balance between the departments, because the town deserves that. You know, that level of, you know, scrutiny on the budget and many eyes on it. Thank you.
Okay, can I just follow up one more thing, Lincoln, just because it's coming to my mind? The consolidated budget. The consolidated budget, we talked about this last meeting. The consolidated budget should reflect the totals as voted by the finance committee. That's what you said last week. So I would suggest that those are the numbers that town meeting are going to consider. The totals that are inclusive in the detail that we just went through and voted the line items are then going to be calculated into the consolidated budget and presented to town meeting for a vote. Is that correct?
Right. So may I suggest, I'd like to suggest that the entirety of the area of disagreement is $9,999 in an overall $42,473,116 budget. So I think my suggestion is that the area of disagreement is small enough that in the context of the entirety of the budget, that I think there's some middle ground to be found here, right? This is not a significantly different budget. So I'm just going to throw that out there now. I mean, nevertheless, what I said is accurate, as far as what the warrant is, but certainly I think over the coming weeks, that area of disagreement is relatively small in the entirety of the budget. So perhaps we can find the middle ground here.
I think that was part of the discussion that we had about having one budget, because the process now includes going to the Board of Selectmen with the FinCom recommendations and talking about it. I mean, that's what we do every year. It's a negotiation. Should the Board of Selectmen be adamant about the non-mandated busing piece fully funded, then there's going to be a need for us to reconvene to consider the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen and find, as you say, Lincoln, some common ground, some middle ground. So that has always been the process. There's always been one budget. There have never been two budgets presented to town meeting. And again, my discussions with you, every time we talk about this, you are insistent that the Board of Selectmen is adamant that they are going to have their own budget. That's what
I don't want to speak for the Board of Select. I mean, this is the interpretation that I've heard from every town council about what is on the warrant and what is not on the warrant. And what is on the warrant, every municipal law attorney that I've ever asked, and more than one, has said, it is what is decided that is on the warrant from the Board of Selectmen and articles by initiative petition. As far as what motion is first taken up at town meeting, I mean, is it a Board of Selectmen motion or a finance committee motion? That's not up to me. I do think that piece is up to the moderator. All that said, I think we're not that far away here. And I don't think, there's a gray area here. Different towns do it different ways. That's just a fact. Many different towns do it many different ways. And the fact is that, the area of disagreement is pretty small, relatively speaking, and I think we can get there. So,
Good point. But I guess, the mechanics of it is the fact that the numbers that were voted tonight need to be consolidated according to your wish to present a consolidated budget to town meeting. How are you going to do the math? That really is.
So the math is no different except for non-mandated busing, right?
So where would that consolidation read?
So non-mandated busing is already its own line in the consolidated budget. So that would be the only line that would be any different than what's in there now.
Okay.
So.
All right, further questions regarding the process or for me to bring to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow night and when I give a review of our deliberations and recommendation? Kathleen?
I do. I agree with you, Lincoln, that the dollar figure is not significant, but I think that the principle behind Finance Committee versus Selectmen is an important one. And I know you've referenced bylaws, and in the past, you've also said that the bylaws are a mess, and we have a bylaw process being taken to get them more organized. But I really think this is a discussion that's worth pursuing. That in my previous town, it was the Finance Committee. We called it the Warrant Committee that made the recommendations. It wasn't the Selectmen. So if it's if it's particular to Whitman, I'd like to know what bylaw it is. If it's a particular to general municipal financing, because I do respect your background in education and municipal financing, but we've spent virtually every Monday meeting with department heads. We've had the level of detail of discussion and follow-up and liaison interactions with the departments. I think we know this budget inside and out, and no disrespect to the selectmen, but we're a cross-section of community representatives, and the 9 of us bring our individual voices. The chair does a great job of letting us all speak our mind, and then we vote it up or down. So I think it's an important, it's not $999. It's the principle of the thing. So you let the camel get his nose in the tent, and pretty soon you're out in the sand and the camel's inside the tent. I'd like this discussion to be pursued.
Thank you, Kathleen. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all for.
John Noon.
Go ahead.
Uh,
Go ahead, John.
I was agreeing with Kathleen up until the camel left the building. But
He's in the building, John.
It's a tent. It's a tent.
That's my mother's saying.
But I think we worked out the budget situation. And we have an important issue that we are taking a stand on. It may not seem like a lot of money, but it represents obviously how we feel as a committee, and whether the moderator allows us to make an amendment on town hall floor to get the number down by almost $10,000, or whether we start with a number that's $10,000 lower. I am not of the belief that we should be all around a campfire getting off on the camel kind of discussion here. We shouldn't necessarily be sitting with the selectmen singing Kumbaya in lockstep. If we find that we feel a position needs to be taken or a money amount needs to be voted, that's our position. It's not, I don't feel, subject to a later negotiation if they don't agree with us. Again, back in the dark ages, yes, it was 40 years ago. The Finance Committee, we were all in agreement on budget issues. We had the biggest battles with the selectmen. I'm not suggesting we need to go back to those days, but I think if we take a stand, we should stick with it. And it isn't necessarily being obstinate. I think it's something well thought out that we feel needs to be done when we take a vote to go in a certain budget direction.
Okay, John, excellent. Point
Just-
well
just-
taken. Rosemary, go ahead.
Just quickly, there is an option for the selectmen to stand up and give a reason for what they might want. And we'll give our reason, but the financial recommendations on Article 2 should be what's presented. The town deserves a functioning finance committee that is reviewing spending, and to undermine that by trying to trump them, to use a word, with another budget is inappropriate and undermines financial oversight. And I would suggest that they do not attempt to do that.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. Anybody else on the subject? And we'll move to the rest of the agenda items. We're pretty well at the 2-hour mark here too. So again, I think it's important that we have made all the recommendations for the warrant and for the line item detail for the budget. And I will certainly take all of the information. Hopefully I can collectively assemble all of your thoughts and make a presentation to the Board of Selectmen at their meeting tomorrow night. So with that, we'll move on to old business. The thing in there, ATM warrant and venue. Lincoln, is there any, based on the changes to the masking and the COVID-19 restrictions, is there any thought about changing the venue for town meeting?
Town meeting will either be on the field or in the high school gymnasium, but certainly at the high school on June 2nd.
No possibility it's going to be at town hall?
No.
Okay. All right.
Not according to the director from the Board of Selectmen at the moment, no.
Okay. So subcommittee reports, we have a Buildings, Facilities, Capital Expenditure Committee. Nothing to report, Dave.
No update.
Okay, thank you. Regional Agreement Amendment Committee, nothing there. Middle School Building Committee, John Galvin.
Yeah, our meeting was postponed to a later date, as well as we were originally trying to have an August 2nd meeting with the MSBA, and that's been pushed back to September meeting, only because one of the more important people in putting together what we're putting together now is coming back from medical leave, and he's still on part-time. So we're decided not to rush it through, and we're going to go for the September meeting. Lincoln may have more detailed information than I have on that, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you, John. Questions for John? Okay, so Whitman Hanson Assessment, non-mandated busing and audit, we've covered those in our discussions tonight on the budget. Other business, we have no communication. We have the last two items, town administrator and accountant updates. Lincoln, anything you would like to bring to the board?
No, I don't think anything that we haven't discussed, except I just want to correct myself. Earlier, I had said that the previous assistant town administrator had been about 82,000, but in fact, so when she left, her salary as assistant town administrator was $90,104. So just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you for that
I want to
update.
chime in here and piggyback on what Al said. That salary was raised in recent memory from 67 up to $80,000, with the understanding that it was a training position, getting ready to take over the town administrator's job. It used to be a $67,000 position.
You're going back 4 years ago.
4 years, yeah, relatively recently.
Yep, very good. Okay, thank you for that update. And anything else, Lincoln?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ken, anything to report out of the accountant's office?
Nothing from here that we haven't discussed already today?
I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the parts of this budget process that you've helped us with immensely. From the time prior to Lincoln's coming on board, I think you have demonstrated certainly a command of the information and presented it in a way that Finance Committee was able to really get to the bottom of a lot of this budget. So we thank you for your participation.
Yes, Ken. Ken, it's been better having you here. You've been great. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
that exhausts the items on the agenda. John Noon.
Just a quick question. We received a copy of the latest cherry sheet. And it came to us through the former town administrator. Is he still in the government mail system? Or does the state need to be notified not to be sending these documents to him that should actually be going to Lincoln?
So I'm receiving them as well.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I guess your question, John, is he still on board as a consultant with the town on the payroll?
Right.
And the answer to that is yes, for a few more weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Further questions? Anything new business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
A second by Al. Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Chuck needs to unmute. Yes. Sorry.
John Noon. John Noon?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Rosemary,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
and John Galvin?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And Lincoln, before we leave too, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you as well for all of the information that you provided to help us get through this budget cycle.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
Lincoln.
you, Lincoln.
Yeah, most
Appreciate
welcome.
your
It's
time
been
here.
it's been a pleasure working with all of you. And I want to echo your comments, Mr. Chairman, on Ken. Ken's been a huge assistance in all of this. So thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all. We are posted for next week. If in fact we don't need to meet, I will certainly send an email out. I would certainly like to give you a day off before we head into town meeting. And so I will keep you updated and send you the link for the meeting on Thursday as I usually do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.